I wanted to do something about what I was starting to become aware of, and perhaps you are too, is what happens to a group discussion, a team effort, a decision that needs to be made when a toxic binary moves in. And by there's already people nodding their heads around the room. Toxic binary meaning our impulse to divide a heated conversation into good, bad, us, them, beautiful, ugly, right, wrong. We could go on and on and on. And what I've started to notice, and maybe you have too, over the years, is that once this toxic binary moves in, it becomes very, very difficult to engage the best input of all stakeholders at the table. So the experience and articulation of differing points of view, that might seem obvious on the surface, but I think for anybody who has encountered group process or needs to be part of a team, oftentimes what happens is we start to listen to the loudest voices at the table. We start to listen to the fastest talkers. We start to listen to the people who dive into the conversation first. So actually, we can't necessarily guarantee that everyone will have their articulation. In between the first and second round, you will be engaging those mysterious cards in the black box in the center of your table. These are called random factors, and we'll talk about those just a little bit later. Now, the roles that are happening within this game are a facilitator that will guide and subtly direct the conversation. Activators, which as Lori had described, are the people who are really pushing and promoting a particular decision or change. And today, of course, we will also have skeptics. So once you read through your case, you're going to pick your starting point of view relative to this case for the first round. Now, we're all relatively strangers here now at our tables, perhaps. But you can imagine what the benefit would be working with a team where they feel like they know each other, right? Habitual behavior patterns, habitual ways of interacting with each other. I know whatever I say, you're going to oppose it, just on principle. It's always the same. She always does it, right? So if I come into a conversation like that, I'm already primed and loaded to do battle with the lady in the lovely green jacket, right? But is that a beneficial mindset to actually solving a problem? Probably not. So this offers me a way to experience her in a completely different way, and vice versa. Once we know those things about each other, once I see her singing in the corner, she sees me running around the room 3 times, we can't unknow that about each other, right? I think we're all grown-ups. We can deal with whatever the card tells us to do for 60 seconds. And they are intentionally unrelated to the issue. That's what makes them random, right? The whole point is to break away from whatever the topic is that's being discussed.
I think about taking away the card.
Yes?
Alliances developed.
Oh, say more about that. Say more about that.
When you switched roles, you found partners who felt the same way you did, and you celebrated those attributes, those points of view that were precious to your little life.
Ah. Okay, so you found alliances in hearing other people articulate that point of view. So you can imagine how that works in a real life discussion, right? If somebody who's been on the opposite side of the fence from me about this particular issue is really truly articulate about that issue in speaking it back to me, I have renewed respect for them. And I feel heard. I feel listened to, right? If I'm sitting at a table and I've got I'm a skeptic / resistor, and I've got my reasons, and I've put them out there, and I'm uncomfortable, I'm irritated, I've got emotional baggage around this issue. If I hear an activator speak that back to me, what happens to me? I feel heard, right? And you would think that this ought to be a given in our cultural experience, in our corporations, in our working experience. But is it? Not necessarily so, right? But if I feel heard, even if the discussion and the decision doesn't go my way, there's a piece of me, just perhaps a small piece, but a piece nonetheless, that can feel okay about it. At least I got my say, and the person on the opposite point of view articulated it back to me, right? Anything else? Yes?
Just to build on that, at our table, what I found was that when I switched to be a skeptic, it was a lot easier to complain, actually.
Oh, yes. Thank you for bringing that up.
But the other point was when I articulated my point of view, I saw the activator, they heard, they repeated, and then they problem solved. And then I felt really validated because not only was I feel heard, I felt there was problem solving going on too.
Yes. So in articulating the other side, suddenly you're forced to step into the value of that other side. And thank you so much for your feedback on how much almost fun it is to be a skeptic, right? You can see how this happens in real life. People who are always taking the no position. It's really comfy cozy because the burden of proof is totally on the other side, right? We had people in the test demos giving us feedback that it started to be really fun to be a resistor because all they had to do was just say no and force the other side to jump through these hoops. And you can see how this plays out in real life discussions and interactions. Anything else? Yes?
I was a facilitator, and I noticed what great actors we have at this table. Because even though this was just sort of a test case, they were becoming very passionate about their point of view, whether it was against or for. So I thought that was an interesting observation as a facilitator.
Yes. Yeah. It's fun to engage a hypothetical case that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your reality. We get to step in there, we get to engage, we get to practice, and we get to discover our own habitual behaviors. We want to really thank you all for participating. We've run a little over.